they're not just doing it to be kind-hearted, good people, but they're doing it for tax reasons, tax purposes. But I also think it's more than that, personally. And I think a lot of people do it for their personal fulfillment, and also to build a legacy and a reputation. Reputation itself is a currency. And so, by, being able to give some of your assets away.
Hello and welcome to the Woke Finance Podcast, the podcast discussing all things finance and all things finance related. It's your boy Peter and I'm with my co-host, my bro Drax. How are you today?
Yes, Peter. Yes, Peter. I'm doing very well. This summer has been fantastic. We've done lots of amazing work in the
Mm.
community. For any new listeners listening to the Woke Finance podcast for the very first time, we are a podcast, but we are also an organization that serves in the community. We go around the community teaching young people, predominantly from underserved backgrounds, personal finance that we wish we knew when we were younger. And this year, we have been targeting a specific group of young people, and it's been an amazing experience. Just last week, I think this episode will come probably 2 weeks after we've done the work, but just last week we were in my home city, which is Hackney, hometown Hackney, delivering a session, and that was a fantastic experience, Peter.
No, I agree, man. I agree, man. So it's great. One, to go back to the hometown, but to just work with young people, man, who, want to know more about things like personal finance. Or funny enough, realize that they want to know more after our workshops. They realize they want to know more about personal finance because they realize the role it's gonna play in their lives, growing up and for the rest of their lives. So yeah, always good. And as we go out, Jack, so we always hear from young people that these are things that unfortunately they've not learned, whether it's at home or in school. So yeah, that's why we're around. That's why we exist. So it's been a busy summer. For our listeners, hopefully you've been having a decent summer so far. Thank you very much for your ongoing support and staying in tune with the podcast. We really do appreciate you, and we see you. Now, in terms of, I guess, going out into the community, this might be loosely linked, but we're going to touch on the difference there, Jax. But in terms of just giving back, and doing things such as that, we've seen, Jax, what would I say? We've seen leaders in the world or well-known people, like, I don't know, of the status of a Warren Buffett, and they always tend to have a certain title next to their name in terms of giving back into different parts of the world. I'm going to say this word once. I might not get it right because I always struggle to say this word. But our listeners will know what I mean. And Jax, you can probably add to it because you might be able to know. But this word is philanthropy. And I know I never said it right, but such is life. And we're going to be taking a bit of a deep dive into it. And also, Jax, why it actually might be quite important to all of our listeners as well, because there's obviously a personal finance element linked to it as well. So, Jax, yeah, I guess we're going to be touching on that in this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a difficult word to pronounce, isn't it? And I don't even know why it's such a difficult word, but it is. Let me try it. It's called philanthropy. I think that's it.
I reckon you got that. You got that.
Or who wants to be a philanthropist? Yeah. Yeah, it's a very, very popular terminology used, as you said, in a lot of, world leaders who are very engaged with giving back, etc. If I, I think the first time I came across the terminology, I was very much interested in it because I didn't understand why all the leaders seem to have this kind of title next to them. So yeah, very interesting.
Now, usually when we hear this word, we think, okay, they give to charities, they give to loads of different charities and stuff like that. Is it as straightforward as that, or and if not, what is like the difference between philanthropy and charitable giving?
Yes, I feel that's a great question. And I think, to be honest with you, the terminology or the definition of philanthropy means that actually most people who do a significant amount of charitable giving or giving to charity can probably qualify or call themselves as a philanthropist. But it's one thing actually qualifying by definition, and there's another thing being actually seen as one. And I think what the difference is essentially the level of which you do it, but also charitable giving is almost like, let's say, you donate a bit of money to your church, let's say you pay a tithe, or let's say you have a charity that you've chosen to donate a specific amount on a monthly basis, or you're coming at the train station, you see, the people with the buckets and they're collecting some money. You decide to pop some money in there, or your friend is doing, let's say, like a race for life, and you want to support and that kind of stuff. All of that is under the heading of charitable giving, right? They're one-offs and that kind of stuff. Whereas philanthropy is more of an intention, something that you've actually decided to do to better humanity, right? It's something that you are actually really focusing on, and you're trying to do it on a large scale. So yeah, I would say philanthropy is a bit bigger. People do go and do things like setting up their own charity, or doing foundations, setting up foundations and that kind of stuff. And I'll say that's mainly the difference. But there is some crossover, and sometimes it can be quite subjective.
Now, why do people actually do it? And I want to start from the first bit in terms of, maybe why someone might be a bit skeptical about someone doing this large amount of giving in this way. So it'd be good to understand, Jax, from maybe even a personal finance perspective, why is it that people do this? And as I said, this is probably the main thing that a critic will come and say, oh yeah, they're giving, but they're doing it for this reason.
Yeah, so there are critics, and actually, you find some leaders actually, or so-called philanthropists, actually not wanting to be labeled as one. And that's because there is a financial benefit of setting up, let's say, your own foundation or your own charity. You're giving a lot of your assets over to charity, and there's one word. It's a word that we've used before. It's an area we've talked about before. It's something that everybody must abide by, which is tax, right? So by giving to charity, set up your own foundation, doing all these things, becoming a philanthropist, there is a huge tax benefit. There are different tax breaks, whether that's to do with your income tax, whether that's to do with reducing your corporation tax if you're a business and you're giving, whether that's to do with inheritance tax is a big one as well. And capital gains, if I haven't mentioned that already. So there's a huge kind of tax benefit of giving to charity or leaving your assets to charity when you pass away in your will. So that's why a lot of people say that yes, this is essentially the driving force between as to why people, especially high net worth individuals and families, want to give to charity. It's almost a way to do tax avoidance, which is actually legal, it's fine, but some people might frown upon it in terms of the driving force behind it.
So in short, they're able to either pay less tax or redirect their tax elsewhere as opposed to the tax person.
That's absolutely true. That's absolutely right. Yep. And as I said, there's different types of tax, right? One of the
Mhm.
biggest ones, let's say, is inheritance tax, which most people know it to be a huge tax. If you have an estate, you pass away with a huge amount of assets. There are some exemptions. They're called nil rate bans here in the UK. I mean, if you own your own property as well, you've got some other exemptions, and ultimately, for an individual person, you can have up to like half a mil or £500,000 of exemptions before you start paying this inheritance tax. But if you are someone who has a large pool of assets and you are high, very high net worth individual, often called ultra net worth high individual, then you will very much very quickly use up those exemptions, those allowances. And yeah, you end up paying 40%, that's 40, on your inheritance tax for those people who inherit your assets. If it's not done, if it's not given to a charity. But I'll give an example, if you do give it to charity a specific amount, you can reduce your tax by up to like 36% rather than 40%. So there's many tax reasons or things that will make you want to put money in a philanthropic way. I hope I said that right, a philanthropic way, but a lot of it is to do with tax.
No, absolutely. And thanks for taking a bit of a dive into inheritance tax. We must do a separate episode on that. So I think sometimes when people hear it in the news and stuff like that, or just things around inheritance tax, they get scared and stuff like that. But the reality is that, and sadly, though, Jax, is that inheritance tax will actually affect, a lot of people
Yes. Yes.
I mean, subjected to what a lot is, but that's the reality because there's a threshold at which one needs to have in terms of the value of their estate when they pass away, and before inheritance tax comes into play. But we must do a separate episode on that, Jack.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. There is a huge misconception about the inheritance tax. Like people think it's 40% of everything, which is not true. So
Hmm.
we will definitely do an episode on inheritance tax, and probably in that episode we'll go further into estate planning generally.
Nice. And just on tax in general, I mean, Jack said that three-letter word about four, well, not about 4 years ago, we invited a tax expert, Stella, and it was on episode 19 and 20. So for our listeners, you check that out, and that was an episode on all things tax related. It takes quite a big deep dive, things that are of course still relevant today. So do feel free to have a listen, as well.
Absolutely. Stella, a very good friend of mine. And I'm very much looking forward to inviting her back on a podcast very, very soon. So watch this space.
Come on, come on, come on, shout Stella. Jax, man, why else? Okay, outside of the money side of things and what critics might get onto them for, why else might they want to go down this route?
Yeah, and I think
And I
look,
keep saying they, but why else might someone want to go down this route?
yeah, and I think look, like I was saying, it's some people may frown upon the fact that they're not just doing it to be kind-hearted good people, but they're doing it for tax reasons, tax purposes. But I also think it's more than that personally, and I think a lot of people do it for their personal fulfillment, and also to build a legacy and a reputation. You know, reputation itself is a currency, and so by being able to give some of your assets away for good causes, a lot of people feel as if that is a way to leave a lasting legacy, setting up a foundation. You know, people set up foundations and they use, let's say, their family name, or something that they're very passionate about. They do so because they want to be remembered when they're gone, as well. So it's not, I don't think it's purely just for, this is personal opinion anyway. I don't think most of them just do it for charitable reasons, or sorry, for tax reasons. But I do think there is a sense of giving and a sense of legacy and fulfillment that really goes into that decision making.
I love that. I love that. And it's important. I mean, that's important for some people, regardless whether they go down that route as well. So I love that. Anything else on your mind in terms of why someone else might want to go down this route?
Yeah, I think, there's ways to pass on assets to different people. I personally think as well, and this might be another cheeky way, as some people might think. I think sometimes by setting up a charity or some sort of yeah, let's call it a charity, you are able to create an entity that may provide opportunities for people that you know, right? So, in a very tax efficient way. So, having not just a corporation, but a charity that is there to serve a good purpose in the community for humanity, but also being able to uh, provide an opportunity for people around you is something that a lot of people, I think, really consider to be a good thing.
Yeah, and I think that's the other side of things, despite, one's opinion about someone. When you look at the outcome of what some of these organizations, charities, achieve in terms of the impact and the lives that are somewhat changed as a result of this long-term generational wealth, so to speak. There's an argument for this as well. At the end of the day, it is going towards supporting people's lives as well. And then it's up to those who are involved to make sure that the money is being used in the best way possible.
Correct. Yeah. So you find a lot of organizations, and there are different types of charity setups, like foundations and endowments and um, donor funds and all these kind of things. So
Let's go into that in terms of that because we hear things like foundations and stuff like that. What does that actually mean to the everyday individual?
yeah, yeah. So a foundation is a bit different from a normal charity in the sense that a foundation is often set up to make grants. So that's probably the easiest way to understand what a foundation is and how to identify them separately from other charities. So let's say I have a huge asset pool in my estate and I want to donate that amount, let's say 10 million to a cause of making grants. and then I can set up a foundation. And when I set up that foundation, often as well, and I know we're going to speak about it, so I'll just throw it in here. Often when those that capital amount is set up in the foundation, it often also gets invested into something called an endowment. And an endowment, think of it as its own portfolio, an asset of portfolio of, the diversified portfolio of assets, from stocks and shares known as equities and bonds and alternative assets, and sometimes even private assets and other cash tap assets. But the goal of this portfolio is quite fascinating in the sense that it has no deadline, it has no end time horizon. It's a perpetual, it's into perpetuity, it's infinite. And essentially, the goal of the portfolio is to also be an income generator. So it does need to provide income in a form of things like interest, dividends, and that kind of stuff. And so, what will happen is they will hire a fund manager with this mandate, and the income that's produced by the portfolio is what they then use to make grants, right? And then they also want to have a total return kind of mandate as well because they want to grow that portfolio ahead of inflation. So let's say they've got like an 8% target. That means they will grow the portfolio by, let's say, 3% a year, which is in line with inflation, for example. But then they will produce a 5% income yield. And it's that income that's going to be used to make grants. And often that's how foundations are set up as and how they work.
And I guess it means that principal value or capital is either always growing or at least staying steady, or obviously as in line with the markets when it goes up and down, it goes up and down, but it's always still producing that income for it to be used for greater good.
Absolutely, that's exactly it. So what you're trying to do is produce an income for today's benefit, but you're trying
Mm.
to grow the portfolio at least in line with inflation. Of course, you want to do better than just inflation. You want to go ahead of inflation, but at least you want to keep the principal in line with inflation so that you keep its raw value. That's what we call it. The raw value is the value adjusted for inflation.
And for our listeners, maybe in the UK, I'm pretty sure it's similar across different parts of the world, but that is definitely a source of income for a lot of charities once they get to a certain size. It's to facilitate ongoing income and sustainability for that charity. So yeah, a lot of charities definitely have endowment funds as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think we can learn from this even as
Mm,
individuals who are investors.
mm.
I think you can definitely set up your own personal endowment, which is just basically a personal portfolio that you want to set up into perpetuity where you can use the dividends or the interest to do amazing things, but also grow the portfolio in line with inflation. Essentially, what I'm saying is you can copy the mandate of an endowment for yourself.
On this actually, in terms of like numbers and stuff, for those that actually go down this route, what are some of the numbers that they actually, put into, set up a charity or an endowment fund, etc.
Yeah, to be honest, if you're going to set up a foundation or an endowment, you probably need a decent amount of money, a substantial amount of money. So we're usually talking in the millions, tens of millions, sometimes even in the hundreds of millions. But it is also very possible to start off with, let's say, a quarter million, so £250,000 would probably be the absolute minimum. Because ultimately, remember, this is still an organization that requires admin. So you need to be able to cover the admin costs involved with managing these type of things. And also, earlier I mentioned you're trying to generate some sort of income from the portfolio. If we're talking percentages, then let's say that 5% example that I used earlier, you would want a sizable pot to be able to generate that 5% for it to be meaningful in terms of grants, right? So probably 250K is a minimum if you're going down the foundation route, etc., or endowment type of fund. But if you're trying to set up just a normal charity for which you are going to be very hands-on, you're going to be actually on the ground doing the work, and it's not just about grant making, but you're really trying to serve a purpose and you're really working in the charity, etc., then you can really start off with £5,000, I believe is the limit, the starting amount to register. And I think that's the starting point. Once you've got that, then of course you can get started. But I would also factor in that there will be some costs involved in just managing the charity, etc. However, I do recall that you can, especially with charities, do a lot of fundraising and that kind of stuff. Whereas foundations don't really do they don't really do fundraising. Whereas yes, if you're a normal charity, you would definitely be looking to do some fundraising and receive some cash from and donations from other people.
Love it, love it, love it. Now, Jax, I want to know about you. Is this an area that you want to get into? And is this a question that every one of our listeners should be asking themselves if they are philanthropists themselves? But before we do that, Jax, you know what I'm gonna do right now? I'm gonna give a shout out to where we're getting new listeners from. And Jax, this area is called Helsinki. No, Helsinki, which is the capital of Finland.
Yeah, Helsinki. I know Helsinki. I haven't been, but a very good friend of mine was there not long ago. In recent studies, I do believe Finland was actually the happiest country in the world.
Mm.
So yeah, from what I remember. So let's. I mean, I was gonna say don't quote me, but I think that's true. So you can double check that yourselves. Welcome to the Woke Finance Podcast. You were here with myself, Jax, and the co-host Peter. And on this podcast, we talk about all things finance and all things finance related. If you want to know more about what we do, like I said earlier in the beginning of this episode, we do serve in the community. If you want to know more, head over to www.wokefinance.co.uk. That's www.wokefinance.co.uk. And if you want to engage with us on social media as well, we are on Instagram, we are on LinkedIn, and we are on TikTok as well. If you search for Woke Finance, you'll be sure to find us. Welcome to the episode. I hope you are enjoying and gaining tons of value.
Absolutely. A massive shout out to our listeners over there in Finland and all over the world. And Jax, you are correct. I had to do a quick Google search. Finland is still number one, followed by Denmark and Iceland. I was looking for Nigeria. I had to scroll down really low, but there's so many countries, so I didn't go that low.
Yeah.
I am pleased to say, Jax, no disrespect, but it's above Ghana. But something tells me it might also be skewed with populations and all that. But such is life. Shout out to all my people around the world and all of our listeners, as per usual as well.
Yeah, fantastic.
Jax, I guess going back to you, for that question to wrap up, is this an area that you would like to get into? And is this something that us on a personal finance journey need to actually be asking ourselves?
Yeah. Well, I think it's something personally, yes, I would definitely want to have a way of setting up some sort of, let's say, fund or charity that does something that I'm personally passionate about. There are many things I'm passionate about, but probably one specific thing, something I've considered in the past for the future. I've considered it in the past for the future is something, let's say, like a benevolence fund where, you set up a portfolio, and the income from the portfolio can go and fund certain things, whether it's grants, whether it's donations to, let's say, widowers or orphans and that kind of stuff. So these are things that I have definitely considered. And but the thing is, like I said earlier, if you're setting up this kind of specific, let's say, portfolio foundation, it usually requires a bit more capital. So yeah, once I have that capital, then it can definitely be done. Something I definitely would want to do. Also because I do want to leave a lasting legacy,
Mm.
something outside of me, that people can remember me by. So definitely something I want to do. But if I was to ask myself, like, am I a philanthropist? Do I want to be defined as a philanthropist even today? Because obviously, yes, I do pay tithe and give to church, and I do quite a bit of social work. I probably wouldn't give myself that title, at least not yet. I'll probably say that I am someone who is a charitable giver. And I'll also say, let's say I'm a social entrepreneur. I'll probably identify more of those titles than a philanthropist at this current moment.
I fully hear that. I fully hear that. I mean, for me, until I can pronounce it correctly, I definitely won't be calling myself that. But no, I fully hear that, man. And for our listeners, I think it's definitely a question that we could ask ourselves, for various reasons. Jack spoke about the legacy, the fulfillment bit, but also, let's honest, there's also, we mentioned the tax, efficiencies around that. Particularly if you know it's generally actually on your heart to give to others and support people. We always say there's a minimum of three things you should be doing with your money. One is obviously saving slash investing. The other is obviously enjoying the fruits of your labor, so spending. And then finally, and in no particular order or ratio, is a giving, man, developing a heart of compassion to help others And of course, money is one of many ways we can give as well. So yeah, man, that's a very interesting, different topic for our listeners.
Absolutely. Topic we have never actually covered before,
Hmm.
which is strange because we have over 200 episodes.
Hmm.
So yeah, this is a premium content for our
Come on.
listeners.
Come on, come on, come on, man. Well, on that note, thank you very much, Jax. Always a pleasure. Until the next time, and for our listeners, remember all,
They
stay woke.